Okay, I think we might have everybody in the room now. So yeah, welcome again to everybody. Welcome to this webinar on the voice of the customer. I guess you would have been expecting to see Rima's gorgeous face welcoming you. I have to give her apologies. She's indisposed today and can't take part, so I've been deputized to lead the webinar today. My first time leading an ICMCI webinar, so I'm learning and apologize for any mistakes along the way, but hopefully we'll get it going smoothly. Just a bit of an admin before we actually start, and I hand over to Giuseppe. First of all, the presentation that Giuseppe is going to make will be about 30 minutes long. And afterwards, there's plenty of time for questions and answers. If you have any questions as we go along through the presentation, please put them in the chat box on the right-hand side of the screen, and we will pick them up at the end of the presentation. The whole of today's meeting is being recorded, so you'll be able to pick it up afterwards and follow through if you missed anything. And have I got anything else? Yes, I have. And the presentation itself will be shared with you afterwards as a PDF file. And what I can say is that in order to squeeze everything into the time available, we've cut down on the number of slides that Giuseppe is showing to give you the general flavor. But the PDF file you'll receive afterwards will have more slides, which will show you a lot more detail, particularly about the process that we followed in ICMCI. Okay, so basically this tool of Voice of the Customer is something which we in the Professional Standards Committee decided to use as part of our preparation for updating the competence framework for ICMCI. And we decided to use Voice of the Customer in order to understand what customers were looking for. And those customers were consultants, member institutes, and clients. So we used this process as part of our research before working on updating the competence framework for ICMCI. So Giuseppe is going to present you the process itself of how Voice of the Customer is done, and also some of the results, the outcomes we got from our ICMCI study. So now I'm going to hand over to Giuseppe. I'm going to mute myself and hide my ugly mug from view and let Giuseppe take the presentation.
Okay, do you hear me? It's a pleasure to present to everybody this topic, Voice of the Customer, that has been the entry point for our study about the updating of the competence framework. Okay, we start. So the agenda is like this. We start with the meaning of the Voice of the Customer, what really stands. Then we'll see a bit the Voice of the Customer process and the ICMCI, the impact of the Voice of the Customer on the consulting industry today, and the results of our survey. And at the end, we'll be able to take a session of Q&A. So some definition, of course, because this is a new stuff we can say in our process In fact, the voice of the customer is a process for capturing customer requirements. But what customer requirements? Not only the wants, but also the needs. And all these needs to be organized, to be structured with an hierarchical way, and giving them a prioritization in terms of relative importance for the customer satisfaction. So it is not, what can we say? It is not simply asking what a customer wants, but it is not simply conducting a market analysis or a market research or collecting data like this, or proposing solutions to our customers. No, that's not. Voice of the customer is a process, of course, and it is used as a best practice in new product developments, in new service developments. So when we need to innovate, voice of the customer is a fussy front end of innovation. Above all, when we use the voice of the customer as a technique, also in Lean Six Sigma projects, you know, DMAIC process. And historically point of view, the voice of the customer started to be used for the quality function deployment technique. That is a technique used for transforming the customer requirements in the technical requirements to develop and produce prototypes, new service and new products. So the high add value of a voice of the customer is a trigger, is an entry point to structure a process of innovation today. So through the voice of the customer, we discover underlying needs, the unspoken needs of the customer. And with the voice of the customer, we don't need to give outputs and results, but outcomes. And the outcome is the reason why we have got an output. The outcome is infusing a layer of wisdom between as-is situation and the future situation. The outcome is exploring more ways to getting a result. So in this context, we can appreciate the high value of the voice of the customer as a trigger for innovation. Going in depth in this path of understanding of the voice of the customer, we have to see also that the practitioner that uses voice of the customers at the beginning as a marketing tool in the 90s, okay, but today is really important to trigger innovation in our processes, especially new processes, is to discover the real needs of the customer, not the surface, but going in depth, not proposing solutions with the Me Too products and so on. No, it's to discover hidden and latent needs, to be outcome oriented. And I show you two examples of this approach. The first one, if somebody of you can remember, in 1979, when a Sony Walkman was introduced to the marketplace, Sony thought about the voice of the customer. The latent need was, okay, I want my stereo portable in the metro, by train, in my car. So they captured this need, this latent need, and invented the Walkman, for example. And that was a boom of this product just in a month in Tokyo with a bit of advertising. Another great example that every bit of us uses today, the personal computer. Okay, another latent need. I want my personal computer in my hand. But what is the product? Voice of the customer highlights, helps the development of a product that is a smartphone. But these two products did not exist before. And there is no way to propose results and solutions, but outcomes in this way. in order to create an add value on this process. So needs and not solutions. The solutions are prepared by the developer, but who is in charge of the process of the voice of the customer needs to highlight the outcome and why you get there. But why do we need the voice of the customer? Okay, right, to grasp customer needs and pain points, of course, or to really think about what really thinks your customer about the products, services, and development, or for sure, to increase customer satisfaction, retention rate, or the revenue. There are some statistics that underline these results using the voice of the customers for the benefit of the companies and the customers. Or to go behind certain feedbacks, scores, reviews, to go in depth in this. Of course, we can also speak of other features, no? Prioritizations, find out where you are falling short on delivering on your promises, and so on. Improve the brand awareness, and so on. But the approach that is hierarchical with a structure, here we have an example. I need a new comfortable house. I go to the architect. Okay, so the architect captures my voice. But okay, comfortable house. But what does it mean, comfortable house, in terms of critical to customer? Okay, a functional kitchen, rooms for kids, bathrooms, room for games. But how you measure these critical to customer aspects? Okay, functional kitchen, square meters, rooms for kids, surface for kids games, and so on. So this is an example of the voice of the customer tree to switch from the voice of the customer only to the measure through key performance indicators. So it's really important to install this process to go in depth and not to the surface. We can, of course, speak of additional examples, but the need is to measure then at the end of the game how voice of the customer impacts the benefits to the customer. So arriving to KPIs. Okay. Now we look at how voice of the customer process had helped ICMCI in order to improve the customer satisfaction aspect and to improve also his competence framework. Okay, normally we start using some appropriate data sources to capture the voice of the customer. You know, many of you know for sure searches, surveys, live chat, behavior of the customer, customer surveys, focus groups that are, of course, used as a marketing tool in order to well understand what the customer think about. Net Promoter Score, that is a technique that we can see how to capture data sources in a quantitative way. And it's really then interesting to explore data mining techniques that then we can see. I show you two examples of a survey and of this Net Promoter Score through the internet. Here, for example, you can see a survey done with a Google form that we have used as ICMCI to start to capture some ideas. So this survey will help us to better understand, of course, the needs of choosing and utilizing a consultancy service. Okay, so for example, we have put the email address and some questions like, what are the most important qualities that you look for in a consultant? Okay, and you answer, ability to recognize the need, unnecessary, irrelevant, desirable, must have, ethics, ambition, flexibility, honesty. So these are closed questions, closed answer, of course. But anyway, it's a first step that we did to capture some important keys for to look in for a consultant choice. And so we have also other, and so on. The Net Promoter Score, for example, is a technique that gives us the calculation of the customer behavior. You can see here in this web, for example, a score from 0 to 10. Okay, if some customer give 100, for example, very good, 10 points, 10 times passive, and we maybe 40, we can say no good. We categorize these three examples, and we have 2 percentages at the end. So 67% answered as a promoter, 27% answered as detractor, 67 minus 27 is 40. So 40 is the Net Promoter Score that gives us this response of the customer to a service, for a service or for a product. For example, if I don't have passive, I put here 0, and this 40 becomes 50, of course, the Net Promoter Scores will decrease. We pass from 40 to 33. And so we can have a very simply this data that can capture in some ways also with over the internet, or also for example, also for a call, what is the score that we collect from an interview or something like that. Okay, I go again to the presentation, and I go on. Okay, so these we have here some example for that. So we want to know in this experience, no, the real client needs, the real customer needs, that was in order to consider them to update, as Nick already said, upgrade our new ICMCI competence framework. We did this exercise utilizing, you see, this survey, but also another survey. This was the first survey with closed answers, and the second survey was with the open questions that is more articulated. The process is like this. We identify as a first step a set of customer wants and above all needs. We express these needs in the customer's own language. This is really important. We affinitize that, we cluster them, and then we give them a priority. This is the process that, of course, the methodology offers to us to go really in depth and to really have a benefit from voice of the customer. So the first step was identify. You see here, identifying is you see collect above all unsolicited feedback. Unsolicited feedback, you see, can be also the body language, can be also conversations, not only interview, but conversations with the customer to grasp some hidden meanings of the relationships. No? And today it's really important also, above all when you use open questions, to use also a text analytics, as we did, because we had some open answers, and we were we get in depth to analyze the text. Of course, also today we have a lot of softwares that use to analyze the texts, software that use also artificial intelligence, for example, today. And so artificial intelligence can help us to go really in depth in some sentences, in some lexical ways, to discover also in the text, in the paragraphs, some hidden needs. This is a new frontier just to go in depth in these aspects. So we identified a complete set of customer needs. Nick launched this letter to some members, no? Just to identify important issues for clients in selecting a consultant with the ability to provide a real value for them. So this was the launch that we did in order to collect and start to see what was the sentiment. We prepared, so open questions, exactly 7 questions that we sent to some IMCs and clients. And we finished this job in June, so with the final report, okay? Here you have the 7 questions. I explain you these 7 questions that we put to our clients. The first one was thinking about a good consultancy experience you must have had. Can you tell us what impressed you most about the consultant? So you highlight, you describe your good experience with your words, with your own words, the second principles. What impressed you most about the consultant? The second is exactly the contrary. Bad consultancy experience you might have had, dear customer. Can you tell me what were the things that made you dissatisfied? So the contrary. The third question, what are the most important qualities that you look for in a consultant? Qualities, you know, you have naturally some qualities, no? And so it's really interesting to see what are these qualities that a client appreciates in a consultant and in his job. The fourth question speaks about the skills, about soft skills. So what are the soft skills that you appreciate in your consultant? The fifth is a question about, do you need a consultant with the in-depth knowledge of your industry? And how your selection process is influenced by the level of knowledge of the industry consultant. The sixth is, when you are selecting for a consultant, you prefer a generalist or specific specialty consultant. So a choice, no? Generalism versus specialty. And the last question is about technology. Of course, today, if you need a technology-oriented consultant, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and so on, or not. Okay, this is the picture that we launched it. We launched this, we gathered the data, we analyzed with the text analytics, but with our minds and not with the software at the moment, okay? And some examples, okay, then we standardized all this form of answers. And of course, it was really important to capture the customer words, its own language. For example, if you launch a voice of the customer process to your clients that are manufacturers, of course, they use some words like identify the root causes of the product problem faster. Or if your customer is an insurance, for example, they will use another language. For example, identify fraudulent complaints. Or if you go to healthcare customers, they will use another language. No, for example, identify patterns in patients' claim data. And so it's really a process to be in the mind of the customer, also in his language, in his words, in his expressions, and so on. So this is an example of that. The third step, you know, is Affinitize. So you have to cluster, you have to create, here you can use some tools like Affinity charts, for example, no? And data text analysis. And you affinitize, you put together in groups that could be, for example, issues about team organization. Of course, in team organization, you can speak about we lose track of projects, or we don't plan regularly, or in structural changes, there's no manager for the content team, and so on. So we create cluster to have a synthetic view of the responses and so on. The last step of the process is prioritize. And here help us, of course, the ABC analysis, the Paretian view of a service, no? For example, you know, if we collect all the answers of a question, for here you have an example. You have, I don't know, ethics is 26 points, 26 times, no? Then you have reliability, 25. So in a descending way, you capture the 80% of the cumulative of these answers in descending way, and you have the A part, the most important part of the answers. So we apply statistic tools, ABC tools, Pareto analysis, in order to have a correct priority of all the answers and all the keywords, we can say, the real words that we have extracted from open responses. But of course, we can have also a journey, we can say, of to prioritize, to give a priority, no? Starting from the low-hanging fruits as a first step. Okay, low benefits, low complexity, and then going to quick wins, where the benefits are bigger, and then to pass to must-do improvements. Okay, high benefits, so also high complexity. Maybe to finish to long-term improvements, slow benefits, but of course, the best is 2 and 3, no? Normally, where the benefits are higher. So some techniques like these are very useful in order to have a clear picture. In the consulting industry today, you know that the consulting industry is really affected by uncertainty, volatile, a VUCA world, we can say, no? And so, of course, there are some researches that has been done from Dial et al. Here you have the source, in which there are 6 forces that are dramatically changing this industry. Think about the access to knowledge and data, no? Who is capable to access to knowledge and data? Think about the technology with the digitization, Industry 4.0. Think about the millennials with their new practice, new way of life. Think about the difficulty to reach talented people. Think about, of course, the cost, quality, leverage that can be done in order to be competitive. But all of it, of course, here we have, again, the help that the voice of the customer can give to be competitive. Client needs not only at the beginning, when we have to develop new services, new products, but this voice of the customers evolves also during the life of a project or the life of a consultancy application. Okay, now we have to go further. So to involve others, IMCs, to involve other customers, to deploy this first experiment of voice of the customer applications into our community and so on. To think about also what is in for me as a consultant, as a community, as IMCI, we know that there are some needs that institutes for management consultants reach for, to reach common values, common rules, common behaviors, brand recognition, and so on. And of course, we have also to go in depth for the cost of this process, but also the benefits that this process gives us. And there are some interesting results that then we can discuss later. So now we give a look of our survey. For example, we have created this clustering. We have affinitized them by geography, for example. So you can have here the example, no? 45 from Bulgaria, Costa Rica, UK, US, no? And so then we have studied the answers of the 7 questions that you have looked at before, according to this geography, for example. And the results are different. For example, you see here, for each of these cluster of this group, Bulgaria, Costa Rica, UK, US, we have different Pareto analysis, different prioritizations, and different characteristics of these qualities. Here you see, for example, the answer number 3. What are the most important qualities that you look for in a consultant? And it's great that the answer, for example, UK, Bulgaria, is ethics, the first one. US is the reliability, the most important quality, reliability, US. In Costa Rica is experience. Of course, this is only the first level. If you go to the second, third, of course, experience is also here. Knowledge is US and Costa Rica, but this is we can say the effect of the geography about the qualities, for example, you look for in a consultant. Or here, for example, you see all the 66 answers all together about the first questions. Thinking about a good consultancy experience, you must have what impressed the most. You see the 80%, the class A. The class A is experience. And this fact, the experience, then knowledge, clarity, engagement, adaptivity, experience, open us great questions. How this community can help millennials, for example, to develop, to grow in experience, because experience is the first quality that impressed our customer. You see, 20 and so on. So this just is, we can say, this is just an example of our answers. Of course, you will receive all the complete set of the answers about the 7 questions that we did together. Okay, I think I have spent my time, and now we are open for question and answers, discussions, and so on. Thank you very much for your patience and attention. I stop my... Okay.
Okay, Giuseppe, thank you so much for that. That was really presented the process we followed and the key outcomes very clearly, I think. And we have a couple of questions so far. So let's take those 2. If anybody's got any others, if you not too late to put them in the chat box. Well, let's start with the first one from Flavio in Brazil. The question is it possible to use indirect methods to hear the customer's voice, such as performance indicators, customer return, new hires, loyalty, etc. I'll kick off on this, and maybe Giuseppe may want to add something, but to me, yes, obviously, those performance indicators are a very good measure of customer satisfaction, but they are generally historical measurements. So basically using performance indicators, you are picking up what has happened. The benefit of the voice of the customer approach is that it actually looks to the future and gives you the sort of things you need to be doing, the sort of actions you need to be putting in place, the sort of enabling approaches you have to have in order to maintain or improve customer satisfaction. So yeah, those performance measures are important, whether they're perception measures or whether they're actually performance indicators. They are useful, but they give you a historical picture on which you can build, and voice of the customer gives you a route map for the future.
Yes, yes, Nick, I agree. The key performance indicators are the base, we can say, are the base we're starting from next future. The voice of the customer as an anyway as a proactive approach. No, the proactive approach is to imagine what can be the future situation starting from the as-is situation. And the as-is, of course, is KPI based, is fact based, is a quantitative approach of the voice of the customer. But we have to merge a quantitative and qualitative approach in order to have this perspective. Right.
Thanks, Giuseppe. Okay, we have a second question, which is really very much connected with that one, I think, from Murray. And it's addressed particularly to you, Giuseppe, so I'm going to hand over to you first of all. When reaching out to customers, how do you guard against unintended bias creeping in? Because it's been shown that customers who are very dissatisfied have the loudest voices and are most likely to respond to a survey. So how do we counter that?
But yes, of course, you know that a survey is not a questionnaire, no? A questionnaire, you answer yes, not, and all is finished. The survey is an exercise to go in depth. But of course, according to your customer, you have to use the right tool, we can say, no? If you have in front of you an angry buyer, we can say, okay, you have to find other tools like conversations, like meetings, like you see, you have a picture of methodologies. The important is to go to create this intimacy with the customer in order to capture what they really think. So the tools, it's up to you to use the right tool.
Yeah. I think, you know, the couple of the questions that we opened our second part survey with, which was to ask our respondents their views of what attracted them to for a good consultancy, what was dissatisfactory for them for a bad consultancy. And that way you take out the bias because you get to the sentiment behind. And that really is what the voice of the customer is about, is getting to the sentiment rather than the hard facts and figures.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just say to a client, were you satisfied or dissatisfied in a survey, then you will likely get more dissatisfied clients responding. But if you make it an open-ended question, what satisfied you most about a good consultancy project, you'll get a much more balanced response.
Yeah, you see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so now I am highlighting a bit this aspect of the survey. Okay, this is the answers that we captured for a good consulting experience that you have already seen. Okay, experience is at the top, you see. Now we see the contrary. Experience, you see, is at the top. This is the second one. Thinking about a bad consultancy experience. So you see the first term that we captured, inability, lack of experience, exactly the contrary. So not regard of your customer, indifferent, we can say, not clarity, incompetence, so lack of competence, we can say, and so on. So if you are not capable, if you're not able to do the promised job, this is at the top. We have discarded.
Okay, thanks, Giuseppe. I think we've got two more questions we need to answer, so I'm going to move us on if that's okay. I mean, very interesting question again from Flavio. How to deploy the assessment for each national IMC? I mean, that's a very interesting question.
Yeah.
Probably more for individual IMCs to answer for themselves in terms of, you know, where they want to go in terms of their national client community.
Yeah.
So I would say in the UK, if I might just say in the UK, we are in the process of making some fairly radical changes within our institute. And the way we've done that is actually to go out and use voice of the customer approaches to understand what our consultant clients are looking for from an institute. You know, what do they value? What are they looking for? And we've had some very interesting responses that have helped us to design some quite radical changes to how our institute will look in the future.
Yeah, of course, you see here all the answers. We divided these answers by geography, so by country. You see, and for each of the 7 questions, we did the Pareto analysis. No, so the first one, for example, I show you the first one. So you see the differences, no? Here you can see the Pareto analysis done by each of them. Of course, the sample is not the same for the 4 clusters, but anyway, we see, okay, Bulgaria experience, knowledge as a good consultancy. In UK, we have again experience. You see, the experience is really an important aspect of the first one for all the geographies, for all the 4 geographies that we selected. The second one, the bad consultancy experience. Bulgaria was inability, you are not capable. Lack of experience for Costa Rica. UK is lack of knowledge. And US, regardless, you don't care of your customer. Lack of regard.
Yeah, I think that gives some good example, really, of the need that each IMC does need to do this sort of analysis for itself in order to understand. I mean, I hope you understand that in order to produce a competence framework at a global level.
Yeah,
we've had to build in all of those differences within the competence framework, but you know, we got enough information to enable us to know what are the key competencies that we needed to build in. Yeah. Now, we still have 2 more questions to go, Giuseppe, so I'm going to move on as well, if we may. from Menachem, in many cases, the client does not know how to define what he wants and what his expectations are. And in many cases, he expects help from the consultant. How do we use the voice of the customer in this sort of situation?
Yeah, effectively, that's right. You don't have to propose to the customer solutions with the voice of the customer. It is a mistake to propose solutions. But of course, if you want to capture, to grasp, you need to analyze in a structured way the sentiments of these customers. And of course, there is a step of analysis when you capture these sentiments, when you capture these words, when you capture these behaviors of the customers. And then there is an analysis, of course, an analysis that you can do alone, but you have to do together with the customer, with the focus groups, with the discussions. So it's the voice of the customer is a process that is not just pose 2 questions and finish, but to analyze the issues that has the customers.
Yeah.
And then there is an effort of creativity, an effort of innovation in order to imagine something new. The real result, the real outcome of the voice of the customer is something new, is an innovation, is something different from what is the me too that has already the customer. Of course, the more you are close to the customer, the more conversations you have with him, the more knowledge you have of the customer, the simpler is this process. Otherwise, if you stop to the surface, you are not able to capture the real needs.
Yeah, I think I think to be a good consultant, you have to not just know about your client, but you have to know about your client's customers. And for me, the answer to this question is to actually help your client use the voice of the customer to understand what the client's customers are looking for, what is going to make them satisfied, what's going to give them a good customer journey. And in that way, you can help your client actually to develop and define what they need and what they should be doing. Yeah,
that's true. That's true. Above all, when your customer is in the middle of a supply chain. If your customer is not at the front end of your supply chain, but it's a manufacturer, is a supplier, and so on, this exercise that Nick added is really important, because the more you are distant from the end user, the more important is this process. When you are close to the end user, for example, a telephone company, we can say, telephone company, then of course the end user is there. The end user is there. The needs of the end user, you touch the needs of the end user. But it's more important to touch the needs of the end user when your client is in a supply chain, but at upfront to the supply chain.
Yeah. Okay, still 2 more questions. I just want to jump to the last question we have in, which is a repeat question from Menachem. I missed the parameter creativity and thinking out of the box. I think what we need to make clear is that the voice of the customer process really actually gives you the input to the creativity and innovation process, because it gives you the outcome which you or your client needs to aim for. Then the creativity and innovation comes in terms of developing ways of achieving those outputs for the client.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, we have a very few minutes left, and there may be some more questions coming in, but there's a very important question from Gule about the number of responses. There were 66 answers that we've shown as the example. How many customers were addressed, and in total, what was the rate of participation?
Yes, we had 66 responses. Okay, the participation was really interesting. Of course, now we need to enlarge because this has been a pilot, we can say, a prototype, no, in our community of this process. Now we have to enlarge this to duplicate this experience to the IMCs and to the community that needs to apply and touch the results, the benefits of that. You know that applying this methodology, I show you that the results that a study from Aberdeen has been done with 207 companies is that the revenue of our growth can grow from 48% on a year over year. And the revenue annual growth can be only 5%. And the customer retention rate could be 87%.
Yeah. Okay,
so
thanks.
These are some statistics of the benefits.
Yeah, I need to say in answer to Khalid's question and also the comment that's come in from Jafar as well about the sample. The fact is that we went out to every single member IMC and asked them to provide us feedback on our survey from clients and consultants in their country of operation. And I have to say, rather disappointingly, we got very few responses back. So, you know, the success of doing this job for ICMCI does very much depend on member IMCs actually being active participants. So like Giuseppe says, when we come back to enhance the survey, the scope of the survey, we rather hope that member IMCs will be more responsive in giving us the information. But please also bear in mind, this was only one part of all the research that we did. And there's much more information that we gathered. And to be honest, even though this sample is small, we feel that we've picked up, even in the small sample, the really significant issues that we need to build into the framework.
Thank you.
Okay, we are literally 3 minutes away from the end of the webinar. If there is one last question, we may have time to fit that in. But otherwise, I would really like to thank everybody for participating this afternoon. Thank you so much for those people who have posed some questions for us. And to remind you that the full presentation with all the other data from our survey will be supplied in PDF format for you. And obviously, this is an exercise that is ongoing, that we want to continue. So, you know, as much participation as we can get for the future would be very useful. We are aiming to be able to finalize our new competence framework together with the other elements of the CMC system before the annual meeting, which takes place later this year. So there will be further work, and we will keep people posted as to our progress in getting the CMC system updated, ready for launch at the annual meeting. In the meantime, thank you so much for participating. I wish you a very pleasant rest of the day, whether that is the rest of the morning, the rest of the afternoon, or the rest of the evening, or a peaceful night's sleep. Good to see you all, and look forward to seeing you again at the next ICMCI webinar.